Have you ever wondered what happens to a country when you put a drama teacher in charge? Well, you don't have to wonder. I can show you. Welcome to Canada, a land of endless natural beauty, polite citizens,
I'm not shaking your hand, bro. You're a f***ing piece of
and a government that truly cares about the economy.
We're focused on Canadians. I'll let the bankers worry about the economy.
Canadian winters are cold and snowy, so if you plan on driving here during the winter season, don't. Your car may be stolen and the police will do nothing about it.
It started off as a routine trip from New Hampshire to Burlington, Ontario, where Robert Arndt was visiting his daughter and his 2 grandchildren. On February 10th at 6:30 a.m., Arndt woke up to discover his truck was gone. After calling the police, he used his GPS tracking device and saw the truck was in Mississauga.
It's driving by on the highway in front of the hotel.
Still, there was nothing police say they could do.
I got the sense that it wasn't a priority.
Planning a trip in the summer? Canada has beautiful beaches for all to enjoy. Just be sure to watch your step at the beach. Allegedly.
Folks, don't be pooping on the beach.
Canada, a country that is so liberal and progressive that even this is appropriate attire for a teacher to wear in front of minors. Nothing is too inappropriate or radical for Canada, except conservative values. Those might get your bank account frozen. Oh, and while you're visiting, if you enjoy getting your news from social media, be sure to have a VPN because here in Canada, the news is banned from social media platforms. Isn't Canada so great? If you love working for free, then you will love Canada. Imagine working hard and giving more than a quarter of your money to the government. And no, I'm not talking about super wealthy people. They find loopholes to pay nothing. I'm talking about regular middle class people. We get to give 25% of our hard-earned money to the government. That's like working for 3 months entirely free. Isn't it amazing? And what will you get in return? Long waits for doctors, declining literacy rates, and the government will send your tax dollars overseas to fund wars and conflicts that you don't even support.
Finish this sentence. Canada will not sell any more weapons to Saudi Arabia, period. I'm sorry, I messed that one up.
Well, at least weed is legal.
A message from the Government of Canada.
Hello everyone, if you're a new viewer, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. If this is your second, third, fourth time watching one of my videos and you're not yet subscribed, we already go together. Okay, make it official and hit that subscribe button. Today, I want to talk about the place that I call home, for now, Canada. As someone who was born and raised in Canada, I always loved it here until recently. Personally, my mind changed about life in Canada when in 2020, the tyrannical government used the pandemic as an opportunity to wage psychological warfare against its own citizens through extreme control measures. While most countries required non-essential workers to stay home, Canada took it a step further. Several provinces had strict mandates on what you were allowed to purchase. Things that were non-essential were banned from purchase. For example, in Ontario, you were allowed to buy alcohol, but not clothing. You were allowed to buy Doritos, but not a magazine or a book. True story. During lockdowns, I tried to buy a lint roller from Dollarama because my dog Coco had got her fur all over my clothing and I needed to go to a work meeting. So I went to Dollarama, I picked up the lint roller, I went to the self-checkout, and when I scanned the lint roller, the system rejected me. I was not allowed to buy a lint roller. That day, I almost snapped. Aside from mandating what you were allowed to buy, they also mandated that you took a certain injection. And if you didn't take it, you couldn't go to the gym, you couldn't sit down and eat at a restaurant, you couldn't go to the movies, you couldn't visit your loved ones in long-term care facilities, you couldn't leave the country. If you didn't take it, many places would fire you. They made life so miserable here for 2 years. It felt like being a prisoner if you didn't take the certain injection. Now, I personally know someone who needed surgery during lockdowns, and the doctor threatened to not perform the surgery because she hadn't taken the injection. Luckily, the doctor did end up performing the surgery, but several people were not so lucky. For example, Sheila Annette Lewis, a woman in Alberta who was diagnosed with a terminal illness in 2018, was put on an organ waiting list in 2020. And in 2020, they mandated that recipients of organ transplants also have the injection. Sheila was not vaccinated and maintained her right to stay unvaccinated. She fought her case all the way up to the Supreme Court of Canada and lost. She then took matters into her own hands and found a hospital in the US that would perform the organ transplant without the injection, but at the steep price of $600,000. Sheila managed to raise over $120,000 through GoFundMe, but unfortunately, in August of 2023, she passed away before she could receive the transplant. In addition to Sheila, Garnet Harper, a man from Ontario, was also denied an organ transplant. In 2022, Garnet Harper was diagnosed with stage 5 kidney disease. Garnet had not taken the injection and maintained his right not to take it, and as a result, he was denied access to the organ waiting list. In May of 2023, he passed away, having never received the life-saving transplant. And to add insult to injury, after all was said and done, Justin Trudeau denies that the Canadian government mandated the injection.
All of the scientists and the medical experts and the researchers understood that vaccination was going to be the way through this. And therefore, while not forcing anyone to get vaccinated, I chose to make sure that all the incentives and all the protections were there.
Ever since then, I have not felt the same about this country, and I will never forgive them for what they did to us during lockdowns. And in all fairness, it was both the Liberals and the Conservatives who enforced those ridiculous lockdown measures. Where I live here in Ontario, our Premier, Doug Ford, is a Conservative, and he was the one enforcing all of that bullshit. For me, that's when I started to feel dissatisfied with life in Canada, and since then, things have only gotten worse. The lockdowns caused a spike in inflation. Following the lockdowns, the Canadian government allowed in millions of immigrants, most of which came from one specific country, and things have gotten out of control. And I know that I'm not the only Canadian who feels this way. What's happened to Canada can only be described as controlled demolition. No way you just coincidentally make the worst possible decisions for your country at every given opportunity for 10 years straight. I'm Canadian and I have a great quality of life. Of course, this is after moving to Thailand. I'm Canadian and I won't let my kids grow here. I'm moving. Very sad, since in the 90s it was the perfect place to live. There have been calls for the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, to resign. And so the question is, what the happened? I can't explain everything in this video, but I will try to explain some of it. But before I do, I want to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Ground News. Ground News is the world's first news comparison platform. They're an app and website that brings together related stories in one place to highlight important perspectives often overlooked by mainstream media. They also provide context on each source's political bias and ownership to help readers see how these factors influence the framing of a story or whether it gets reported at all. While exploring Ground News with my Vantage subscription, I came across this story: Ontario Liberal MPs call for Trudeau to step aside. This story was reported by 108 different sources, 32% right-leaning, 23% centrist, and 45% left-leaning. And Ground News allows you to easily compare how different sides of the political spectrum are reporting on the same story by comparing the headlines. For example, ABC Australia, which is a left-leaning publication, wrote this headline: Canadian PM Trudeau in fight of his political life after party revolt. While the Toronto Sun, which is a right-leaning publication, wrote this headline: Infighting shows Liberals can't run their party or country. The left-leaning source calls the situation a revolt against Trudeau, while the right-leaning source emphasizes the chaos in the Liberal Party, demonstrating the two different approaches to the same story. Another feature Ground News has, which I love, is the blind spot feature. A blind spot is a news story that has political undertones and is disproportionately covered by media sources on one side of the political spectrum. For example, here is a story that is being underreported on the right. Trump backtracks on campaign promise to lower grocery prices. Only 9% of the sources covering this story are right-leaning, while 53% are left-leaning and 38% are centrist. Or there's this story: Whistleblower claims Biden admin suppressed evidence supporting COVID-19 lab leak theory. Only 12% of the sources are left-leaning, while 72% are right-leaning and 16% are centrist. I wonder why. I really enjoy using Ground News. Everything is presented in such a straightforward and organized way, with multiple sources to help you easily draw your own conclusions. And in a world where it feels like everyone has a political agenda, it's refreshing to have a platform that is completely neutral. I'm excited to offer my viewers 50% off the Ground News Vantage subscription, which is the same plan that I use to have access to all of their amazing features. To take advantage of this massive discount, go to ground.news/NCS, scan the QR code, or click the link in the description box down below to subscribe for less than $5 a month. Subscribing not only supports my work, you're also supporting an independent platform working to make the media landscape more transparent. A special thanks to Ground News for sponsoring this video. So what exactly happened to Canada? Why does life here kind of suck right now? It all started back in 2015 when Canadians elected Justin Trudeau, alleged son of alleged PDF file Pierre Trudeau. Allegedly. During that election in 2015, Justin Trudeau promised to have a diverse cabinet. He said that his policy of running deficits would help grow the economy, and most importantly, he promised to legalize weed, something that motivated droves of young potheads who wanted to get high off of that BC Kush to go out and vote. And in my opinion, that is what helped him win the election in 2015. Damn potheads. But something else that Trudeau had promised all the way back in 2015 was to make Canada a leader on fighting climate change. Let us never forget when Trudeau told us how he and his family do their part in fighting climate change.
What do you and your family do to cut back on plastics?
We have recently switched to drinking water bottles out of water out of when we have water bottles out of a plastic. Away from plastic towards paper. Like drink box water bottles sort of things.
While the Trudeaus fight climate change in their household by drinking bottled water out of drink boxes, the rest of us commoners have been forced to fight climate change by paying carbon taxes. In 2019, the Trudeau government began imposing a carbon tax, and the goal of the carbon tax is to disincentivize greenhouse gas emissions by financially penalizing people and companies for contributing to air pollution while also encouraging environmentally friendly solutions. While pretty much everyone agrees that we need to minimize harm to the environment for ourselves and for future generations, many people disagree with carbon tax specifically being the solution. To many Canadians, it feels like the government is using the carbon tax as a means of extorting more tax dollars out of us in the name of climate change. And it has even gotten to the point where the mayor of Toronto has proposed taxing residents for the rainwater that falls on their roof.
I have a joke for you.
Okay.
The government in this town is excellent and uses your tax dollars efficiently.
All of these taxes feel like money grabs that have no regard for how they make life for the average person more expensive. Carbon taxes means we pay more to commute to work because fuel is now more expensive. That same fuel, which is now more expensive, makes groceries more expensive because at every step in the food production process, it is subject to carbon tax. The farmer is subject to the carbon tax. The trucking company transporting the goods is subject to carbon tax. If the raw materials like meat or grains needs to be processed, that factory is subject to the carbon tax. The store selling the products is subject to carbon tax. All of this double and triple dipping adds up, and the cost is indirectly passed on to consumers because the businesses are always going to maintain their profit margins. But not only is food more expensive, utilities are more expensive. Since the implementation of the carbon tax, we pay more to heat our homes in this cold ass country because not only have fuel prices gone up, but there is also a separate line item specifically for the carbon tax, or should I say carbon pricing. The correct term is carbon pricing because taxing a tax is illegal, although that is what they are doing. When I pay my heating bill, I pay the carbon tax and then I pay tax on the carbon tax.
Bullshit.
Not only do Canadians pay a carbon tax, we pay a sales tax on our purchases, which in the majority of provinces ranges from 11% to 15%. And then, of course, our earnings are taxed. According to Statistics Canada, the average Canadian earns an annual salary of $57,100 per year. Each province has its own income tax rate, but on average, a Canadian earning $57,100 per year has to pay approximately $8,900 in income taxes. In addition to that, employed Canadians have to pay CPP, which is the Canadian pension plan that is ran by the government, as well as EI, which is a government-run insurance program. So a Canadian earning $57,100 per year will not only have to pay the $8,900 in taxes, but also an additional $4,137 to cover the cost of CPP and EI. So the average Canadian has an annual take-home pay of approximately $44,063 or $3,671 per month. Compare that to the average cost of rent in Canada, which according to Money Sense is $2,193 per month. So that leaves the average Canadian renter with $1,478 to pay for things like transportation, food, clothing, phone, internet, medications, medical bills, dental care, emergencies, and all the other necessities of life. Plus, trying to put some money aside to save. In Canada, the cost of living crisis is out of control. It is very difficult to survive on one income. These days, most young people don't move out of their parents' home unless they have a spouse or a roommate to share the cost of living with. Taxes are high, wages are stagnant, the cost to rent or buy a home is barely affordable for a single person, and quite honestly, if you want to live in the Toronto area, it's just not worth it. Just to give you an example, here is a home in Toronto. This is a very modest home that needs upgrades. It has property taxes of $10,000 per year, and in October of 2024, it sold for just over $2 million. Now, no offense to these people, but $2 million for this house is asinine. But this is happening because we have a housing shortage. Our population growth has exceeded the rate of new home builds, and this problem has been plaguing Canada for decades, but as of recently, shit has really hit the fan. Between 2020 and 2024, Canada's population has grown by almost 3.5 million people. Okay? Million.
There are too many of them. What are we going to do?
And I'm going to go ahead and address the elephant in the room. Canadians are a polite people. Most don't let you say things that can be viewed as politically incorrect, but behind closed doors, they all say the same thing. In the last few years, Canada has taken in a disproportionate amount of immigrants from India, most of which are coming here on visas as international students with the expectations of staying here permanently, and this mass immigration in such a short space of time has had a ripple effect in dozens of ways, not all of which I will have time to cover in this video, but if you guys want me to do a separate video on that topic, let me know in the comment section down below. But I do want to say something about it because there has been a lot of unintended consequences of taking in large numbers of immigrants from India in such a short space of time. It seems like the government didn't do proper vetting of who they let in, because over here in the GTA, it is like GTA. Crime has been happening more frequently, and organized crime specifically has been on the rise, and it does seem like the same groups of people are behind it. In 2023, the largest gold heist in the history of Canada was pulled off. When I say Toronto has become GTA, I am not kidding. Over $20 million worth of gold and cash was stolen from Pearson Airport in Toronto.
They're pretty sure they know who the driver is. They can't find him, but they find the truck. They also find these bracelets, which police believe is what the thieves turned some of that stolen gold into. They're almost pure gold, worth $89,000, smelted using these casts and molds. They also find a paper trail, about $430,000 in Canadian cash. Perhaps, they say, the profits made by selling some of the gold, and they make several arrests. Amit Jalota, Ahmad Chowdhury, Ali Raza, Prasath Paramalingam, and Parampal Sidhu. He was, allegedly, one of the Air Canada employees working on the inside. Police are still looking for Simran Preet Panazar, that is allegedly the other Air Canada employee working at the time of the theft, Archit Grover, and Arsalan Chowdhury.
When the names and pictures of the suspects were released, a lot of people on social media, they weren't surprised because this has been happening more often in major cities, especially in Toronto. Jewelry store robberies, liquor store robberies, home invasions, all of these things and more have been on the rise, and unfortunately, the same groups of people are often involved. Car thefts specifically have been on the rise in Ontario. Every week, videos like this go viral where someone who stole a car but is not too keen on going to jail will do shit like this rather than just surrendering. But not all car thefts are this eventful. I personally have one friend who had his car stolen out of his driveway twice. They successfully sold the vehicle. The first time, the insurance company gave him a replacement vehicle, And a few months later, they stole his replacement vehicle. But they actually drove the car down the street and they left it there. And my friend noticed that his car was stolen. He called the police. The police found the vehicle and they returned it. Because this was the second time it happened, my friend decided to just get a new vehicle, a vehicle that was less desirable. And since then, he hasn't had the problem. And I also have a relative, one of my cousins, who had her car broken into and they were trying to steal it. She had a wheel lock on her steering wheel and they tried cutting off the steering wheel and they damaged her dashboard and they did all sorts of shit to her car and then they gave up. And they ended up leaving the vehicle. They didn't steal it, but her car was damaged and she had to get it fixed. And my cousin had security cameras in her driveway, but that didn't deter the criminals. They just disguise their faces and they do the crimes anyways. And the police aren't doing much of anything to solve these crimes. Home invasion car thefts have become so regular that the police have literally told Canadians to leave their keys by the front door to make it easier for criminals to steal their car.
Car thefts have become more prominent across the GTA, up nearly 25% in 2023 from the year prior. Now, police in York Region are out with a new safety tactic. Door stops have been handed out to some residents in an effort to prevent door kick break-ins to steal car keys. It's a move that has one Unionville family feeling uneasy. Constable Marco Ricciardi had a new message for vehicle owners who keep their fobs in Faraday pouches.
To prevent the possibility of being attacked in your home, leave your fobs at your front door, because they're breaking into your home to steal your car. They don't want anything else.
The majority of these car thefts are not just independent events that have nothing to do with each other. This is happening because there is an organized crime ring and they have people on the inside. People who work for government agencies have access to vehicle records, so they can see the address of who owns a vehicle, they can see the make, model, and year of the vehicle, and they take this information and they give it to the robbers who use that information to target unsuspecting car owners at their homes. These same employees are also creating fake documents and fake VINs to assist in the transportation of these stolen vehicles. The Toronto police have arrested 59 Service Ontario employees who were involved in this ring, and they recovered millions of dollars worth of stolen vehicles, but they haven't yet given the names of the employees who were involved. So at this time, I can't say for sure if these employees were new immigrants, but people are speculating that they are because this has been a trend. In addition to personal vehicles being stolen, transport trucks are also being targeted by organized crime rings to steal the cargo.
Today, Peel Regional Police announced that 15 people have been charged with stealing fully loaded commercial vehicles than selling the cargo to unwitting buyers.
I think this is more indicative of the fact that the government of Canada did not properly vet the people that they allowed into our country, and they actually have kind of admitted to that.
Here's what happened. Traditionally, if you wanted to travel to Canada from one of the countries on this list, there are 140 of them, you couldn't just book a flight and expect to pass through customs. You needed a visitor visa, and to prove that you had plans to return home. Before 2023, if you were from one of these countries, you had to show a return ticket, you had to show where you were staying, and you had to prove that you had the money to support yourself while you were visiting. But then, at the beginning of 2023, the Canadian government quietly decided to waive those screening requirements for the rest of the year. The reason, they said, was to help reduce a massive backlog of over 2 million visitor applications in the system.
So they were less stringent about reviewing some of these applications to come here on temporary visas because they just wanted to get through the backlog.
And according to an internal memo that the Globe and Mail got a hold of around the time of the decision, the government knew that this might have consequences, writing that not all applicants would be genuine visitors. These visitor screening measures came back at the beginning of this year. It was always meant to be a temporary change, but the government made some tweaks, tried to automate some of that screening process. And according to the analysts we spoke to, there are concerns it's not nearly as thorough as it used to be.
Something else that has been brewing in Canada that has largely gone ignored by the government is the rise of Sikh extremism in Canada. In India, there is a separatist movement that originally began in the 1970s called the Khalistan movement. These are people who are of the Sikh faith who desired to have their own state in the Punjabi-speaking region of northern India. The movement later died down, but in recent years has reignited amongst the diaspora all around the world, including here in Canada. In recent years, we have seen fairly large groups of Indians who support the Khalistan movement organized in the streets of Canada, calling for the unaliving of Indian Prime Minister Modi and also voicing a desire to turn Canada into the new Khalistani state.
Everybody like share. This is our country. We are owner of Canada. We are proud Canadian. Like share everybody, like share. This is our country. Sorry. We are owner of this country. We are Khalistan. This is our country.
When asked about the rise in Sikh extremism, Trudeau said this.
The Indian government says you're being soft on Sikh extremism because you rely on votes from that community. How can you demonstrate to them that they're wrong?
They are wrong. Canada has always taken extremely seriously violence and threats of violence. We've always taken serious action against terrorism, and we always will.
Despite his strong language there, in the face of Khalistan activists, he says nothing. During an event, activists can be heard yelling words supporting the Khalistan movement while Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, and Pierre Poilievre were on stage, and all of them ignored the chants.
One of Canada's greatest strengths is its diversity. We are strong not in spite of our differences, but because of our differences.
Something else that has been a topic of conversation here in Canada is the threat of tariffs, something that many economists say will cripple the Canadian economy if it were to happen because America is our biggest trading partner. Trump has threatened to impose 25% tariffs on Canada, one of the reasons being that Governor Trudeau is not doing enough to stop illegal immigrants from entering the U.S. through Canada.
Startling new allegations this morning involving Canada from India's top anti-money laundering agency. Officials there are linking dozens of Canadian colleges to alleged human smuggling of Indians into the United States.
Enforcement Directorate says that it has uncovered a massive criminal network that spans across continents. It consists, they say, of thousands of agents, some 262 Canadian colleges, and it all links back to two Indian entities. Now, the allegations are that these two Indian entities have drawn up contracts with these Canadian colleges, and their modus operandi has been to get Indians across to Canada on student visas. Now, these students would never attend the colleges they were supposed to and would then illegally cross over into the U.S. Now, the agency here says that so many tens of thousands of people have used this route to illegally cross into the U.S., and most of these people pay about $60,000 to $70,000 US to make this journey. They say that their probe is continuing. They haven't named the Canadian colleges who might be allegedly involved in this criminal network, but they say that their investigation is ongoing, and they're also looking into the Canadian colleges specifically.
The Canadian government has not properly managed immigration, and you see it when you walk down the street, and you see it when you shop at a store. Tim Hortons, which used to have a very diverse workforce, people of all ages and all ethnicities would work there, until recently. When you go to pretty much any Tim Hortons across Canada, the majority of the staff are international students. All these security jobs like Garda, Paragon, Brinks, etc. are all exclusively going to international students. Various fast food restaurants, Walmarts, many other companies, especially entry-level jobs, overnight seem to have fired all of their existing Canadian staff and replaced them with international students. And The reason that this is happening is because the government is subsidizing it. There are various government programs that pay up to 70% of the wages of temporary foreign workers, resulting in companies replacing Canadian workers with temporary foreign workers. Many parents are complaining that their children can't get entry-level jobs because those jobs are exclusively going to international students. It's not fair to Canadians, nor is it fair to the international students because they are being exploited for cheap labor, and I wouldn't be surprised if many of them are working under conditions that violate Canadian labor laws, but because they are vulnerable and they don't want to lose their jobs, they endure it. There's so much more that I can say on this issue, but I want to hear from all of you, all of my Canadian viewers. How do you feel about the current state of Canada? Do you support the carbon tax, or are you looking forward to Trudeau being forced out of office? How do you fight climate change? Do you and your family fight climate change by drinking bottled water out of a drink box? If you do, let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, please don't forget to hit the like button. If you're not yet subscribed, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I would like to give a special thanks to all of you who are supporting me on Patreon. I really appreciate you. And if you too would like to support me on Patreon, my link to Patreon will be in the description box down below, as well as my link to Ground News if you would like to support my sponsor of today's video. And before you go, if you haven't watched this video, which was my previous video, please check it out. I will have it linked for you in the end cards in a few seconds. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.